Thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of AB 563. My name is Mark Pfost, and I am with Veterans for Wisconsin Voters. I served in the U.S. Army as a recon scout for an armored cavalry squadron for one hitch. 4 years later, I enlisted in the United States Navy, this time as an electronics technician. After retiring, I moved to Wisconsin for the first time to attend UW-Madison. After graduating, I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 22 years, where I helped private landowners restore wildlife habitat on their ground. I voted Republican almost exclusively for 40 years, but no more. I'm now an independent. I slowly came to realize that I voted in part on governing philosophy, part on habit, and probably a little bit on just laziness. I eventually recognized that my views don't fit in silos. I think most voters are this way, although each person's mix is different. Few of us are ideologically pure, but primaries force each of us to vote as if we were. Many candidates are probably no different until they compete in a closed primary. Final five voting, not ranked choice, will help elected officials vote their conscience, and we voters will be able to cast our votes for someone instead of against someone. I'm going to offer just two examples from my experience to illustrate the need for election reform. Twice in the past decade, I was furloughed by government shutdowns. In each case, I was not allowed to do my job because of congressional inaction. As a biologist, I was angry that Congress prevented me from doing my job. As a taxpayer, I was furious at the waste of taxpayer money. By passing these election reforms, you can help Wisconsin send candidates to Congress who are truly interested in doing the nation's business. I failed to mention earlier, but in the last primary election, or last election cycle, I was also a poll worker. And one of my tasks was to explain to each voter that the ballot was a closed primary and that the voter had to first pick one party and then vote only for candidates within that party. Anecdotally, I heard about 10% of voters complain that the ballot was confusing. Another 10% griped about not being able to vote for who they wanted to, irrespective of party. How many didn't vocalize their angst? I don't know. My only reply could be, it's Wisconsin law. You can help Wisconsin show other states that election reform is possible. I ask you, please support and pass Final Five voting. If there's any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? See, I was right. As we get fewer and fewer representatives, there's fewer questions. I did not see him come back from the phone. So, Kevin Miller.
Okay, good. It's still afternoon, not evening. That's a good sign. I have some data from a previous question. Could I present that really quickly? It won't take long.
Certainly.
So when Mr. Sikma was here talking about Opportunity Solutions Project, there were questions about ballot exhaustion and throwing away ballots, things like that. There was an analysis done by a group that is in support of Final Five voting that during the 2016 U.S. Senate election in Alaska, 27.4% of the ballots were exhausted by the kind of definition of people we're talking about. These were people who voted for an independent or another candidate who wasn't a Republican or a Democrat, and they could only vote for one of those two. So because they weren't voting, it was like they were voting down the ballot, and their vote then didn't count because those people didn't really stand a chance to get in. So that was 27%. In 2022, 3.5% of the votes weren't really counted because people didn't vote for one of the candidates that was in the top three that went through the instant runoff process. So it just showed that really, even in ballots that we currently use, there's a lot of exhaustion, so to speak, that really has the same effect, but you have fewer choices. So good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm a lifelong resident of Wisconsin, retired Army colonel. I represent Veterans for Wisconsin Voters. I will note also I spent 30 years in K-12 education, and I'm currently a member of the Wisconsin Civics Learning Coalition, working to get more civics education in our schools. Dramatic purposes, sorry. I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is the beginning of the oath of office for enlistment, for commissioned officers, and for the office of Congress. I swore that oath when I enlisted, when I re-enlisted, and when I commissioned, and I had the privilege over my 37-year career to execute that oath numerous times for re-enlisting soldiers and commissioning officers. All of you swore a similar oath to the U.S. and Wisconsin constitutions to support those constitutions. I embraced the Army values throughout that career to ensure I was always fulfilling the oath I made, and I continue to use them as a moral compass. Unless all soldiers on a team in a unit across the Army live those values, we can never achieve the potential and peak effectiveness of our military. The same is true of our government. If elected officials are not able to live their values, we never develop and implement the best solutions to our biggest challenges. If one of your values is loyalty, you should understand that loyalty doesn't require us to blindly follow individuals or organizations. Loyalty requires us to hold accountable those people that we are loyal to their values or our shared values. That's what loyalty demands. When others compromise these values, the extent of our loyalty is that we try to help them restore their honor by returning to their values, not blindly following them. If they won't do that, they're being disloyal, not us. You should never have to compromise your values to remain loyal. If one of your values is integrity, which is doing the right things the right way for the right reasons, you should never allow the ends to justify the means. Okay? Every time we do this, we erode trust, and when elected officials do this, it erodes the trust of our citizens. I believe that's the core reason why we have so much divisiveness and such a lack of trust. It's because we so often compromise our values in order to say the ends justify the means. By definition, justifying the means compromises your integrity, because if you weren't compromising your integrity, you wouldn't have anything to justify. And if one of your values is personal courage, you can show that through never compromising your integrity by allowing the ends to justify the means, or allowing anyone or any organization to guilt you into showing blind loyalty. I have served with thousands of soldiers who have made incredible sacrifices to live the Army values and fulfill their oaths. One soldier with whom I served in Afghanistan was then Captain Will Swenson, who was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for repeatedly driving into AK-47 machine gun and RPG fire in an unarmored Toyota pickup truck multiple times to pick up and rescue Afghan soldiers and other soldiers and retrieve the bodies of 4 Marines and their interpreter who were killed in the Battle of Ganjgal. I'm asking you to live your values, assuming they include loyalty, integrity, and personal courage, by seeking the facts and truth about 5 and 5 voting, open primaries, and even ranked choice voting, and then acting on them in the best interests of our state and citizens. I have sought such facts and truths, including openly listening to and considering arguments for and against, and I've filtered them through my values. My conclusion is that AB 563 will free our congressional representatives to live their values, truly serve their constituents, and fulfill their oaths of office. All veterans made sacrifices. Many of us risked our lives in order to serve our country, fulfill our oaths, while our families often made even greater sacrifices. You have an opportunity to let your core values be guideposts in fulfilling your oaths. I'll ask you the same question I asked a room full of soldiers and their families who I spoke to last Saturday night. Will you be leaders with integrity who have the personal courage to do what's right the right way and for the right reasons? I thank you again for this opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?